I used to think camping was the safest kind of alone time. No traffic, no neighbors, just trees, wind, and that quiet you can almost hear. But the thing about the woods is, they don't belong to you. And sometimes you realize way too late that you're not as alone as you thought. Tonight's video is 4 camping stories. No monsters jumping out of the dark, no dramatic movie twists. Just the kind of realistic, slow-building dread that makes you sit up in bed and listen to the corners of your room. And if you like these kinds of stories, make sure you're subscribed, because this is the kind of rabbit hole we go down a lot. Alright, first story. I started solo camping in my late 20s because I wanted to prove to myself that I could. Nothing extreme, just weekend trips, state forests, easy trails. I had a little routine. Hike in, set up before dark, eat something hot, and then read until my eyes got heavy. This time I picked a dispersed spot I'd used once before. Flat ground, and a little fire ring someone had built, and a view through the trees of a small creek. It was the kind of place where the forest felt open and friendly. I got there late afternoon and passed one other guy in the road. Old SUV. Muddy, tailgate down. He was standing beside it like he was debating something. When I drove by, he lifted a hand like a lazy wave, and I waved back without thinking. At the trailhead, I was unloading my pack when I heard someone behind me say, "Solo?" I turned and it was the same guy from the SUV. Up close, he looked tired. Not dangerous exactly, but the kind of tired that makes people unpredictable. Sunburned nose, cracked lips, and a bandana around his neck. I said, "Yeah, just one night." He nodded like he'd filed that away. "You got a gun?" I laughed because it caught me off guard. "No, just bear spray." He looked past me toward the tree line. "Spray's good," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. Then he smiled a little, like he was trying to lighten it. "Be safe out there." I remember thinking, okay, weird question, but maybe he's just one of those guys. Then he walked off down the road. Not towards the trails, just away. And that was it. A nothing interaction. I didn't even think about it again until later. I set up camp, got a fire going, ate, and cleaned up. Everything normal. A calm, pretty evening. The creek was loud enough to cover most little noises. By the time I crawled into my tent, it was fully dark. I read for maybe 15 minutes with my headlamp on low, then turned it off. And that's when I noticed something. Another light. Not close. Further up the slope behind my sight. Just a faint bobbing beam through the trees, like someone walking with a headlamp. At first, I felt relieved. I don't know why. It's reassuring to know there are other people around, until your brain catches up. Because there weren't any campsites up that slope. It was thick woods and uneven ground, no trail, and no reason to be there. I watched the light move for a full minute. It didn't come down toward me. It kind of circled, like whoever it was kept stopping and turning, scanning. Then it went off. Not like it disappeared behind a tree. It was turned off. The forest went back to complete darkness, and suddenly my little tent felt like a glow stick. I told myself it was probably someone looking for a lost dog or trying to find their camp and being dumb about it. I forced myself to breathe slower. Then I heard footsteps. Not the soft, random crunch of an animal. Not the scattered pattern of a deer. It was a steady rhythm, slow, careful, coming from behind my tent. I froze so hard I realized I wasn't even blinking. I couldn't hear my own breathing over the sound of my heart. The steps stopped right behind the tent wall. And then, very close, someone whispered, "Hey." It wasn't loud. It was like they were trying to make me answer without yelling. I didn't move. A few seconds passed, and the voice said, "You awake?" My mouth went dry. I reached for my bear spray without looking, praying I didn't knock something over. And then the voice, same volume, same calm tone, said something that made my stomach drop straight through the ground. He said my name. Not buddy, not man, my actual name. I hadn't told it to anyone out here, except I realized with this horrible clarity that when I was unloading at the trailhead earlier, my phone had rung, and I'd answered it out loud and I said, "Hey, it's me." and my voicemail greeting, if someone called, says my name. I couldn't tell if I was being paranoid or if my brain was trying to stitch together a story that made sense, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to respond. Silence again. Then, a zipper sound. Not my tent zipper, thank God, but the distinct sound of someone opening or closing a jacket, like they were getting comfortable, like they planned to stay a while. That's when I snapped out of it. I grabbed my keys, my headlamp, the bear spray, and I crawled out the other side of the tent, like I was escaping a burning house. I didn't stand up. I didn't turn my light on. I just crab walked into the trees until I was far enough that the tent wasn't right next to me, and then I bolted. I ran straight to my car. I don't remember packing. I don't remember thinking. I just remember fumbling with the key and ripping the door open. When my headlights came on, they lit the edge of my campsite. My tent was still there, but it looked wrong. Like it had shifted, like someone had pressed against it. And behind it, at the tree line, I saw a single reflective flash, like eyes or a zipper pull, or something shiny catching the light. Then it moved back into the woods. I threw the car into reverse so hard the tires spun in dirt. I drove without looking back. The next morning, when I was calmer, I realized my phone charger was still in the tent, my cooking kit too. I considered going back in daylight, but the thought of walking into that same patch of trees made my hands shake, so I didn't. And every time I think about that whisper, my name right against the tent wall, I wonder how long he'd been standing there before he decided to speak. This happened when my girlfriend and I decided to do a quick overnight at a campground we had never been to. We both worked a ton, so we left after dinner, meaning we didn't pull in until almost 10 p.m. The camp host's lights were off. The whole place was asleep. That should have been our first sign to turn around. But we were tired and stubborn, and we had already paid for the site online. We found our spot with our headlights. It was one of those standard campground pads. Picnic table, fire ring, little metal post with a number on it. I remember getting out and smelling smoke immediately. Not "someone's having a fire right now" smoke. More like a sweater that's been near a bonfire. Old smoke. I walked to the fire ring and held my hand over it. Heat. Like real heat. The kind you feel from coals that have been alive within the last hour. I told my girlfriend and she did that nervous laugh people do when they're trying to pretend something isn't weird. "Maybe the last people didn't put it out," she said. But the site was empty. No tent, no chairs, no cooler. The table was clean. It didn't look like someone had just left. We set up anyway because what else do you do? We were both doing that thing where you avoid looking too far into the trees because you don't want your brain to make shapes out of darkness. We got our tent up fast. No fire and no music, just quiet efficiency. And then, when we were done, I walked to the restroom because I had figured I'd rather do that now than in the middle of the night. The restroom was about 100 yards down a gravel loop. The place was lit by these sad yellow lights that didn't reach the trees. Halfway there, I saw someone standing near the dumpsters. They weren't moving. Just a silhouette, shoulders slightly hunched, like they were reading something on the side of the bin. I couldn't see their face. I kept walking, and when my footsteps got close, the person turned their head towards me. I said, "Hey." They didn't answer. I'm not even sure they blinked. It felt like their whole face was pointed at me, but there was nothing reflective. No glasses, no phone screen, nothing. I sped up, did my business. I was suddenly very aware of how loud restroom doors are at night. Then I walked back, trying to look normal, like you do when you're hoping someone isn't watching. When I got to our site, my girlfriend was inside the tent already. She whispered, "Did you move the cooler?" I stopped. The cooler had been right next to the picnic table. Now it was about 2 feet closer to the tent, like it had been dragged. Not tipped, not knocked, just shifted. I said no, and that's when we both went quiet, because there are only a few explanations for that. Animals usually knock things over. They don't carefully reposition them. And if it was us, we would remember. We zipped ourselves into the tent like it was a vault. I kept my phone brightness low. She clutched her keys like that would help. For maybe 20 minutes, it was silent. Then we heard a sound right outside the tent. Not a footstep, and not a branch. A slow, deliberate scrape, like someone's fingernail dragging along the side of the nylon. From the front of the tent, across, and then stopping right near where my head was. I swear my whole body went cold. My girlfriend whispered, "Don't move." We stayed frozen. Then a different sound, the faint click of something metal, like a carabiner or a keychain. And right after that, we heard a soft breath, a human breath. Not loud enough to be a snore, and not sharp like a cough, just someone exhaling, close. I wanted to yell. I wanted to burst out with bear spray and rage and bravery. But the thing is, when you're actually scared, you don't do movie things. You do small things. I slowly reached for my phone and hit the car alarm button on my keys, still inside the tent with us. The alarm exploded into the night, and immediately, whoever was outside ran. Not walked away, ran. Fast footsteps crunching gravel, then fading into the trees behind the site. We didn't stop the alarm. We let it scream until it timed out. We didn't unzip the tent, and we didn't look out. We waited, listening, until the silence returned. Then we did the only smart thing we should have done earlier. We got in the car and drove out. We didn't even fully break down the tent. We just grabbed what we could, stuffed it in the trunk, and left it messy, like we were fleeing a storm. As we pulled past the dumpsters, the headlights swept across them. No one was there. But on the ground, right beside the bin, was something that made my stomach flip. A crushed, still warm cigarette. Neither of us smoked. This one still makes me angry, because it's the kind of thing you wish you could blame on the woods. But it wasn't the woods. It was a person. A few summers ago, 3 friends and I did a 2-night trip in a national forest area that allowed dispersed camping. We were responsible about it. Fire safety, food storage, the whole 9. We picked a spot off a forest road near a river. Not right on the water, but close enough to hear it. The first day was perfect. Hiking, swimming, cooking, laughing. We were all in that rare mood where it feels like nothing bad can happen. Right as it got dark, headlights appeared down the road. A white truck rolled up, slow. Official looking, with a light bar on top. A man stepped out, wearing a green shirt, tan pants, and a hat. He had a badge-looking thing that clipped to his chest, and a little radio on his shoulder. He walked up like he belonged there. "Evening," he said. "You folks got your permit?" We all kind of looked at each other because, permit? For dispersed camping? My friend Mark said, "We didn't think we needed one." The guy nodded like he'd heard it 1,000 times. "This section changed last month. You do now. New rule. A lot of folks don't know." He had a clipboard too, which is honestly the most convincing prop on earth. He asked us where we were from, how long we were staying, and if we had firearms, if we had alcohol, just a bunch of questions that didn't feel that crazy in the moment. But looking back, it was like he was taking inventory. Then he said, "You're also too close to the river. You need to move at least 200 feet back." Mark started to argue, and the guy's tone hardened instantly. "Do you want a citation? Because I can write one." That flipped the vibe. Nobody wants trouble in the woods. Nobody wants law enforcement drama either. So we did it. We packed up in the dark, annoyed and rushed, and moved to a different pull-off further up the road. While we were packing, the guy stood near our site, watching. At one point, I noticed he kept glancing at our cooler and our storage bins, like he was memorizing what we had. It was subtle, but it made my skin crawl. When we finally drove to the new spot, he didn't follow. He just said, "Have a better night," and walked back to his truck. We set up again, exhausted. Tried to laugh it off, but something felt off enough that we were all double-checking our car doors, and we kept our valuables close. The next morning, we drove to a trailhead to do a day hike. On the way out, we passed a ranger station kiosk thing, so we stopped, mostly out of spite, to ask about the new permit rule. A real ranger was there. Older guy, official patch, and real truck with markings that were way more obvious than the one we'd seen. We told him what happened. His face changed immediately. He said, "That wasn't us." No hesitation, no maybe, just flat certainty. He asked us to describe the guy, and the truck and the badge. And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, "We've had reports. He's been doing this to get people to move so he can go through their stuff. Sometimes he comes back later when he thinks you're asleep." My friend Mark went pale. We asked what we should do. The ranger told us to file a report and to relocate to a more populated area if we felt uncomfortable. We didn't even debate it. We ended our trip right then, drove back to our original area to grab our extra gear we'd left hidden behind some bushes. And when we got there, the bushes were disturbed, like someone had been rummaging. One of our bins was completely gone. We never saw the fake ranger again. We never got our stuff back either. We filed the report, but realistically, it's the forest. People vanish easily. Now anytime someone shows up at a campsite with authority and a smile, I don't feel reassured. I feel my guard go up, because official looking is a costume anyone can wear. I'll be honest, I used to roll my eyes at the phrase, "the woods went quiet." It sounds like something someone adds for drama, but then I experienced it. I was camping alone in a small semi-established area, 5 or 6 sites spaced out along a loop road. It wasn't crowded, but there were enough people that you could see lanterns through the trees. I went to sleep early because I'd been driving all day. Around 2 a.m., I woke up needing water. The air felt cooler than before, and my tent was damp with condensation. I remember thinking the forest smelled heavy, like wet leaves and earth. I lay there listening. Crickets, a little wind, the distant hush of a river. Normal. Then I heard a sound from somewhere across the loop. A yell. Not a scream, not panic, more like someone going, "Hey!" It was sharp, like they were calling to someone. I sat up instantly awake. A few seconds later, I heard it again. Closer this time, or maybe just clearer. "Hey!" And then a third sound, lower. A woman's voice maybe, saying something I couldn't make out. I waited for laughter, for conversation, for the everything's fine noises that would follow people being loud at night. Nothing. The forest held its breath. Even the little background sounds, crickets, rustling, felt like they faded. And that's when I heard the footsteps, running. Fast, uneven steps, moving along the road, then suddenly veering into brush. Then a thud, like someone tripped or fell. And then right after that, silence again. The kind that makes your ears strain because your brain refuses to accept it. I stayed in my tent, frozen, trying to decide if this was a fight, a prank, an animal encounter, or something else entirely. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. 2:17 a.m. I considered calling 911, but what do you say? "Hi, I'm in a campground and I heard a yell and now it's quiet." I hated myself for hesitating, but I did. A minute passed, then 2. Then from somewhere close, maybe the site next to mine, I heard a car door close. Then another. Then an engine start. Headlights swept through the trees, bright and frantic. A car backed out too fast, tires crunching hard, and sped off down the loop road. As it passed my tent, I saw the driver's face for half a second. White, eyes wide, mouth tight like they were trying not to cry. They didn't stop. They didn't call out, they just left. And that's when I finally decided something happened. I cracked my tent zipper just enough to look out. Across the loop, one campsite's lantern was still on, but dim, like it had been turned down or knocked over. The picnic table was empty. No movement. And then, maybe 30 feet away, by the edge of the road, I saw something that made my stomach turn. A single shoe. Just a shoe. Lying on its side, like it had been dropped mid-step. My brain did this awful thing, where it started imagining the person attached to it. I closed the zipper and locked my hands around my phone so hard my fingers hurt. This time I called. I gave the dispatcher the campground name and the loop number and told her exactly what I heard. Yelling, running, a car leaving fast, and a shoe in the road. She stayed calm, asked if I was safe, and told me to stay put, and said a deputy would check it out. The wait felt like an hour, but it was probably more like 15 minutes. When the deputy finally rolled through, his spotlight cut across the trees like a blade. He stopped near the shoe, got out, looked around, called out, no answer. He came to my tent and asked me to come out. I did, keeping the tent between us at first, like a shield, until I saw his uniform clearly. I explained again. He listened, nodding, face unreadable. Then he walked with me over to the shoe. It was a hiking shoe, adult size, untied. He swept his light around the brush, and that's when we noticed something else. Footprints. Not clear boot prints in mud, just scuffs and flattened grass leading off the road. The deputy followed them a few feet into the woods and then stopped like he'd hit an invisible wall. He stared into the darkness and said, very quietly, "Nope." He walked back out and his voice got more professional. "I'm going to drive the loop," he said. "You're going to pack up in the morning and head out." I asked him if someone was missing. He looked at me for a second, like he was weighing whether to tell me something. Then he said, "People do dumb things at night. Fights, drugs, getting lost, sometimes animals, sometimes other stuff." I wanted to ask what other stuff meant, but the way he said it made me decide I didn't actually want the answer. He told me to stay in my tent and keep my car keys close. I didn't sleep after that. At dawn, I packed as fast as I could. My hands shook the whole time, and I kept turning in circles, scanning trees like I was expecting someone to step out, smiling and wave. On my way out, I drove past the spot where I'd seen the shoe. It was gone. And I know the deputy didn't take it, because if he had, he would have said something. He would have logged it, bagged it, anything. So to this day, I don't know if someone came back for it, or if it never meant what I thought it meant. But I do know this. That night, the woods went quiet. And whatever caused it was close enough that I could have opened my tent zipper and stepped right into it. So, yeah. If you needed another reason to trust your instincts in the woods, there it is. If you want more stories like this, just hit the like button so the algorithm knows you're into this corner of the internet, and subscribe for the next upload. And if you're listening at night, maybe turn a light on. See you in the next one.